online. As far as search engines go, yeah, you can continue using Google. There's over 300 search engines out there, so you can also use other companies as well. And you can do a search on search engines and find out how many there are. I think the most important thing is to always triangulate the issue. So when I read a newspaper about an event that happens in America, I'll read the Chicago Tribune, I'll read the New York Times, I'll read, is it the London Post, I think it's called. I'll try and read something from Malaysia or Japan, and then I'll figure out, okay, who's got the right angle on the story. Even Australia, sometimes I'll read that. And I'll tell you, I'll usually get 3 stories out of it, and then I'll have to figure out which one is real. So that's how different it is. In fact, in the UK, they did a study in 2018. They studied 2,000 official posted newspaper articles. And guess what? Out of the 2,000 articles, they found out that 80% of them had no basis in fact. And this is their leading newspaper. So it's a tough thing today to get the truth. It's tough. It takes a lot of diligence. Who has another question? Okay, then we'll move into the workshop portion here. That's a big eraser. All right, this is representative of your life, your child's life. And they have many aspects to them, but at the core is who they truly are. Some people will call that their spiritual well-being, or their id, or psyche, whatever you want to call it. Part of them is dealing with their body. And you got your mind, and you have your emotions, and so on. We're very complex creatures, but I'm going to try to categorize things a little bit. So for instance, in the body area, we'll talk about fitness, nutrition, overall health, whatever categories you want to use, we can call it whatever you want. As far as the mind and emotions, with the mind, we can talk about the educational side of us, how we learn, our process of thinking. Are you getting a feel for this? I'm kind of just dividing up who we are into different facets. When we do this, we think of ourselves in a wheel moving forward. Have you ever seen a wheel that's a little lopsided? If I was lopsided, if one leg was longer than the other, maybe I'd walk like this or something, right? Well, that's not efficient. I can't run very fast if I have lopsidedness in my life. Well, if you're not taking care of your health, you're eating away at your wheel, and every time you try and move on in life, you're going to have a thingabobble, right? Instead of it's the okay, I'm a sound effects guy. I can't help it. If you're not taking care of continuing education, then this might eat in it as well. And now you have yourself a really interesting, okay, now all of a sudden this isn't erasing as good. Now you have a really interesting looking wheel. We know what happens if you have a square wheel. It's plop, plop, plop. If it's round, it's nice and smooth. life can be very smooth if we have our life well balanced. The majority of children today do not live a balanced life. Most of them, when I see them and I meet them for the first time, this is what I see. Do you know what it's like for me having a conversation with that person? I know the top of their head really well. Do you know mine now? I don't have anything to look up on. Okay. If we take this into our emotional side and moving around, we're talking about the arts, the creativity of us. How many people here are highly creative? Okay, one person. Okay, how many of us are liars? Let me tell you something. First, let me ask this question. How many of you have the right side of your brain? Okay, everybody does. That means you're all liars because you said you weren't creative. So logic comes out of the left, creativity comes out of the right. You might not have developed the right side of your mind very well, but you're still creative. I know, tough one to take in, isn't it?
You said highly.
I said highly. Yes! Okay, now I will admit I spend more time in the right side of my brain than the left. But I'll also admit that I only said a couple things that were from the right side of my brain so far. Everything else came from the left. And do you know how dark part of the conversation got? It was all left brain stuff. The part that you were a little more fascinated with came from the right side of the brain. Our relationships, most of the time, come from the right side of the brain, not the left side. Our functionality comes from the left side. Our relations and our growth and our drive and determination tends to come from our creative side. We have to be developing both sides of our brain. More importantly, we need to make sure our kids are developing both sides of their brain. Isn't that right? He had to think about it for a moment, but he's with us. So one of the things I like to do, just to mix it up a little bit, is that to make sure that the wheel is a little more rounded in the category of creativity. Is I like to practice things differently. How many of you have a repetitive series of actions you do in the morning when you wake up? Okay, most of us do. Okay, the alarm clock goes off, you hit the snooze button 2.3 times, you crawl out of bed, you head toward the shower, whatever you do, I don't know what you do. For me, I have learned so far, I'm not completed with the assignment yet, but so far I've learned that there are 101 ways to get out of bed. How many ways have you found so far? Well, I either get out of the left side or the right. I found 101 ways. I purposely look for a new way once a week to get out of bed. Why do I do this? Because it kicks off the right side of my brain immediately. It engages me. I can be innovative. In business, innovation is our future. Without the right side of your brain, you're just doing what all the robots are going to do, and they're the ones that are going to replace you. The right side of your brain cannot be replaced by a robot, no matter how hard they try. They still haven't been able to figure it out. Now, granted, I've seen some robots that have done paintings, but they're not any good. They're not artistic. They're mechanically put together, and they look mechanical, and therefore it does not touch the soul. Humans are the only ones that can do right brain thinking. How's that hit you? So how many of you are going to start practicing right brain thinking? None of you? Okay. If you need help with that, thecreativeyoupodcast.com. You can just listen to that podcast. Thecreativeyoupodcast.com. It's free, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so to help the kids get balanced in all aspects of our life, and we'll go over some of these as we workshop it. One of the greatest things we need to do is figure out, are our kids millennials or Generation Z? Do you know the difference? No? Millennials started in 1981. Generation Z started in 1997. So which category do you, anybody have kids in both groups? Okay. So you're in one or the other group. Probably most of you, by the looks of it, Generation Z. Okay. So what do you know about Generation Z? Can anybody tell me something about Generation Z? Yeah.
Love playing video games.
Love video games. I'll take it a step further. They are the first generation to be born into a society that is always on. They do not know what life is turned off, or as we call it, unplugged. They do not know what that is. If you want them to understand it, you have to purposely take measures to give them a part of life without. I have a friend who, for 2 weeks every year, they all put their cell phones and everything else, all their devices into a box, they lock it up, and they go on a trip into an area where there is no phones, no computers, and no television, no video games. The kids are monsters for 3 days, and then they become the most incredible human beings they have ever met in their lives. And the remaining 7 to 10 days of their vacation are absolutely remarkable. And the growth in relationship and the love and the camaraderie that they experience is just beyond compare. And they absolutely adore those times. Because there is no other way for them to know what it's like being unplugged. That's a tough one. What else can you tell me about Generation Z? You look like you want to say something. No? Change your
Cell
mind.
phone and always cell phone.
I always have a cell phone. They don't know what it's like to not have a cell phone. Instant gratification. You want to listen to a new song? Now you're listening. I had to earn money. I had to go down to the store. I had to look through the 45 records, pick out the right one, find out what was on the other side because it was a different tune that I didn't want, take it all the way back home, get out the record player, and then I could play it. These kids don't even know what a record player is. Okay, LPs have come back in style, but certainly not 45s. In fact, do any of you know what a 45 is? Okay, well, so let's do a quick history lesson. It all started out a long time ago when they built the Victrola. That was that hand cranking machine with the big horn on it that played music off of what was called a 78 RPM record. It was made out of vinyl, and they'd go, and that's how they played music. Well, once they got past the cranking part where it was electric, they made 45s, which were smaller, only one song per record. Then they made LPs. They had 12 to 14 songs per record, and on it went. You know, cassette tapes, 8 tracks, mini discs. I mean, the history is just loaded with weird things. In film and television, they went from 16 millimeter film to 35 millimeter film to 70 millimeter film to 2-inch videotape to 1-inch videotape to 3/4 inch videotape to 8 millimeter videotape to Super 8 videotape